All right, what's going on, guys? Fast cars, fast money. It's me and Coop here this weekend. We just got done recording the Xfinity video. We gave you guys all the picks. So if you haven't seen it already, it's up live on our channel. You can also find the spreadsheet for that and this one over on Twitter. It's at Fast Cars FM. But after this weekend, we got 2 weeks off for the Olympics and we'll be coming back. So won't be seeing anything from us for the next 2 weekends, but it'll be nice to kind of take a little bit of a break from the grind that is NASCAR DFS. But it's all in good fun and we enjoy doing it. So let's look at the race preview and initial thoughts for New Hampshire for the Cup Series this weekend. So it's the 750 horsepower package. So just keep that in mind. With the Cup Series, they run two different packages. It's a little bit confusing, but if you're looking at lap data, make sure you're focusing on that 750 horsepower package because drivers, some of them perform a lot better in one package versus the other. This is 301 laps. So it's a 1 mile length track. So what that means is Dominator points are going to be back in play this weekend. It's really important that you guys nail those Dominators or probably fit 2 to 3 guys in your line who have the potential to lead laps. Otherwise, your line's easily going to get outscored if you're only focusing on place differential and finishing potential. You really need to get those lap leaders in there. The two tracks that I would say are probably the most similar to New Hampshire, probably Phoenix and Richmond, but I would really just focus on all the lap data from the 750 horsepower packages that we've run earlier this season, just because Phoenix and Richmond were a little bit earlier in the year and some things have changed since then. But as far as lineup construction goes, I don't know if this is what Coop's doing, but I'm really going to try to get two like for sure dominators in there. One guy who maybe has the potential to dominate, but also has some other upside, maybe from a lower ownership perspective or place differential or finishing potential. And then my last 3 plays, I'm really just going to focus on value. So finding those guys who I know can finish top 15, top 12, or find guys who start deep in the field who have that positive 10, positive 15, maybe even positive 20 place differential upside. But we always like to start with Coop for the top plays, the most expensive guys. So from Hamlin up to Mr. Kyle Larson, who got a little bit of a discount this weekend, probably because of his performance last weekend. But who are the top plays this weekend, Coop?
Yeah, I haven't given up on Larson, even though he hasn't performed as well the last couple races. I still think that last race was actually the first race that I saw him racing the other drivers and thought, wow, he doesn't look as fast or faster than the competition. The other weeks there was something that happened that just pushed him back a little bit. But last week's the first week, and Hendricks as a whole didn't look as fast as we expected him to. So I'm not exactly sure what was going on there, if they were trying something different or what. But I don't mind Larson. I think he, as well as Kyle Busch there, the second most expensive driver, are the two most likely to be the dominators of this race. And I think that Hendricks is still a tier above the others, although I would put Kyle Busch right there toe-to-toe with any of the other Hendricks drivers for this upcoming race. The last 4 races, he has finished top 3. So I don't care that he's starting on the pole. I really like Kyle Busch, and he's finally putting races together where something doesn't go wrong with his car. He doesn't get into the wall early. Somebody doesn't get into the side of him. And if he starts on the pole, he can get a good push off. It may be clean air the whole way for him. So those are the two that I have the most interest in. And then I really don't want anything to do with Harvick. I know he keeps getting top 10s, but we're at this price, we're looking for dominators, and I'm just not interested. I'd rather go with Byron or Hamlin over him. And Hamlin's getting tough because he hasn't been getting out front, leading laps or winning races. He hasn't won a race yet like we'd like him to. So it's getting tough to go with him too. But Byron has showed a lot of speed this year. And if you want to pivot off of Larson and Kyle and hope that Byron, gets it done, I don't think that's a bad pivot. Same with Denny, but I just think the chances are getting slimmer and slimmer as the year goes on, and he just isn't leading the laps or winning the races that we're expecting him to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, for the longest time this season, Hendrick has just been the top dog. It's like everyone has been chasing them And over these last couple of weeks, it's not like they've fallen off a cliff or anything. Like they're still running really well. And even Larson, he was up to like fifth place or something before I think he got caught speeding on pit road, and that kind of, put him back in the pack. But if you looked at, the end of that race, he was still running in front of the two Bush brothers at the end, and he wasn't getting lapped. He just kept, advancing his position. So yes, he didn't dominate the race like everyone expected him to, and it did burn a lot of DFS lines last weekend. But I'm not going to just, solely, focus on one race and let that dictate for the, my plays moving forward. Like Coop's saying, he's still the guy to beat. He's still probably in the best car and still probably running the best, even though Kyle Busch, like Coop was saying, has been putting these great performances together. So I think both of them are going to draw a lot of ownership. But for me, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. The three guys that I'm really going to try to focus on this weekend are going to be Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and then Joey Logano. And the reason that I say that is if you look at Phoenix, you look at Richmond, and if you look at just the 750 horsepower package as a whole, if you look at just pure speed at the lap data, I mean, Hamlin, Logano, and Truex are all three of them are in the top five. Love JGR this weekend. I think this is the weekend that we can see them even outperform, outdominate Hendrick for once. And you're easily able to fit all three of those guys in a line. So I think that's kind of my approach, is like I really want to get Hamlin, Logano, and Truex in there. I mean, Truex starts on the front row just like Kyle Busch does. And if Kyle Busch is drawing all that ownership, and there's a competition caution at lap 25 or 30 or whatever it is, where they restack the field, that's an opportunity potentially for Truex to leapfrog him on pit road, or he might even just pass him straight up on the track. And I think potentially he might come in a little bit lower owned than Kyle, just depending on how people are building lines. People might be afraid to play Truex starting second, but if you just look at the lap data, I mean, I think Truex should be a one of the contenders to win this weekend. So those are the three guys I'm targeting. Not that I'm not going to have lines with some of these other guys, with Larson, Busch, Byron, Harvick, Elliott, even Keselowski. I think you could make an argument for any of them. But if I had to pick three, the three that I'm going to go with this weekend are going to be Hamlin, Logano, and Truex, just based off of how they've been running in the 750 horsepower package alone. I don't know if you're as high on those guys as I am. It sounds like you like Larson and Busch a lot this weekend, which I think are still slam dunk plays. That's just the approach that I'm personally taking.
Yeah. And I really think Kyle is probably going to get out and lead the early part of the race. If he doesn't, I think it's going to be Truex. And I think that those two can run out front. And like you mentioned, JGR, I think those two could lead a good portion of the early.
It looks like your audio cut out again for some reason, so I'll get you back here in 5 seconds whenever it clicks back. Seems to be kind of that 5-second window when the audio clicks back.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we're back.
Sorry about that again.
It's all good.
Yeah, what I was saying was I think the chances of Busch leading are higher, which obviously is reflected in the price. But if you want to go GPP, even not GPP, this is one of those races I actually don't mind starting the guy first and second, especially. They should lead the early part of this race. If you look at who's in third and fourth behind him, it's going to be Elliott, who seems to just drop like a rock at the beginning of the races for whatever reason. And then Kurt Busch, who is likely going to push pretty well, but I don't see him passing them early on, even though he showed a ton of speed last week, totally dominated that race, which was awesome to see. But I really think it's going to be Kyle or Martin Truex that get out front early to lead the laps. And I actually don't mind playing both of them on there. And then Logano, you touched on Logano. I'm also high on him. Team Penske's kind of had a quiet year, but on these shorter, flatter tracks, I think Logano is always a great play. So I also like Logano.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when you get to the Cup Series because there's just so many potential dominators that are out there. When you're at the Xfinity Series, usually it's a little bit more straightforward just with the difference in equipment and some of the skill levels of the drivers there. And it's tough with no practice and qualifying. Like they're just unloading. So it's really going to come down to who unloads closest to what you actually need and then who's able to make those adjustments throughout the race. But this is a race where it's very unlikely that you're going to have one driver like Kyle Larson go out there and lead, 250, 260 of these 300 laps. This is a race where you're going to see a couple of different drivers get out front. So you really want to try to maximize how many of those guys you can fit in your lines, even if it is potentially a little bit risky of, oh, this guy starts sixth and I'm playing a guy that starts second. Like, how is that going to work out for me? Well, if they lead you a ton of laps, it's not going to matter because every time they lead a lap, they're probably running the fast lap and they're probably, they are running the first place for that lap. So they're getting those laps led points as well. So I think we made some good arguments for those guys up there. And then the 8K range, I can't believe they priced Daniel Suarez at $8,900. Yeah, he starts deep in the field, but I mean, that's a crazy price to pay exclusively for place differential. He's not going to lead you any laps. So I'm not too interested there. If he started deeper or if he was cheaper, I'd be interested. But at $8,900, that's going to be a tough price to pay off. But a guy that I have been really low on like all season long, and I'm actually high on for this race particularly, is going to be Eric Almarola. The reason I say that is if you look at track history, this is statistically one of his better tracks that he runs at. And if you look at Stewart-Haas as a whole, yeah, they've been running pretty poorly this year, no matter what. But their 750 horsepower package is a lot better than their 550 horsepower package. So I think him starting 22nd gives you some good place differential and some good value. I can see him fighting for a top 10. And I feel pretty confident with him in that line. And then I think Alex Bowman's interesting too. Like he did win the Richmond race, which is a similar track to New Hampshire. Starting fifth might scare a little, some people, but it's crazy to get a Hendrick driver at, $8,200. So I might even bump him up to medium.
And he was the driver that I was going to touch on too, because I think he's about as low as you can go and still be able to reasonably say that he has dominator upside. I don't think it's a whole lot. I don't think it's a high chance of it, but I think that there's still a chance of it. He's good enough on these shorter, flatter tracks that I think that he has potential to get out and lead. And if you want to go with that narrative, he offers a ton of salary relief at $8,200. So he'd be the other driver that I would highlight for a GPP line in this range. Dropping down to the 7K range, similarly to what you said about Suarez, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that Ryan Preece is $7,800. That makes no sense to me, and I want nothing to do with it. Don't mind Christopher Bell. Remember that he's also racing in the Xfinity Series. He's going to already have ran the track and know a little bit about, how the track was handling the day before. So that's a big advantage for him. And he's in the nice JGR car that has run well in the 750 horsepower package. So I like Christopher Bell. Matthew Benedetto is really interesting. He just lost his ride, but at the very end of the race, it was funny. Right as soon as he said something, super positive about his team, we're moving in the right direction. We've put together 2 races in a row that have been really good, and we're looking forward to building on it next week and hoping that we can keep the momentum going. That's when he loses his ride. So sucks for him, and we'll see how he handles that, whether, he starts pushing and really racing hard to try and get a ride for next year, and whether his team can keep it clicking or whether, that sort of breaks some of that momentum. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. And then the 2 that I really like out of this range are Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And I actually really like Ross Chastain too. I think at 7,000 starting 20th, he offers PD upside. We saw, it's interesting after these past few races, how the playing field has leveled for NASCAR teams in general. I think overall, you're seeing JGR and Kyle Busch kind of catch up to Hendricks and compete with them a little bit. And then at these lower level teams, you're starting to see teams like Chip Ganassi with Kurt Busch winning and Chastain putting in a second place finish a couple races ago. You're seeing them start to compete a little more, where you'd expect teams like Stewart-Haas or Penske to be up there getting first and second place finishes, and they're not. Recently it's been Chip Ganassi and Roush Fenway. We have Ryan Newman in this range too, so I'll touch on them. They started off the year really strong and really hot, Newman and Buscher, and they've sort of fallen off, and now it's the Chip Ganassi team that's kind of moved in and filled that spot of a, not a team with, 3 or 4 drivers on their team that are really putting in the work. So I like Chastain at this price this week. And I think 20th is a good spot to get him at.
Yeah, he definitely helped Kurt a little bit, at the end of last week, secure that win. But it was good to see Kurt finally get to victory lane. He's been doing that kind of about one race a year here for the last few years. And it was also kind of fun to see him outrace his brother for that. And then obviously hearing the crowd cheer for him and kind of boo Kyle, which was always kind of entertaining. But for Stenhouse there, I think you made a good point. I mean, he starts 29th, basically right next to Suarez, and you look at the price discount that you're getting. So if you're going to play a place differential guy, I would say Stenhouse is your guy. I don't mind Ryan Newman. I just think Stenhouse has more upside than Newman. Newman has really run into some issues here as of late. And he's probably going to draw a lot of ownership, but I don't mind if you have to go there. I still think I'd rather play Chastain and Stenhouse over Newman there. And then Matt's Benedetto, he has been putting together some solid runs, like Coop was saying, and it does suck that he's getting kicked out for Harrison Burton. Feels like he loses his ride every year. So hopefully they can finish out the year strong. And this is a package he runs well in a type of track that he should perform well in. And then Christopher Bell, I think, is just a slam dunk play. I mean, he's strictly a value play that even has the potential, like an Alex Bowman does, to get up there and lead you some laps. It's probably not as likely as the top tier plays, but to get a guy that has lap leader potential at $7,700, that is a steal. And then the 6K range, the only guy I'm kind of interested in here would be Bubba Wallace. And the only reason I say that is we know this is basically a 5th JGR car that the 2311 works very closely with JGR. If you remember back when Christopher Bell, I think it was Christopher Bell back in the 95 car, which was also Levine family racing, which was closely aligned with JGR. We know how well JGR runs here, and that really carried over to that 95 team. So if they can provide that package or the notebook or whatever it is over to 23XI, I can see Bubba performing well. I mean, that might be some wishful thinking on my end, but this team's been clicking as of late, and they're actually approaching kind of that playoff bubble. So I have to give them a little bit more credit as of late than I have recently. So he would kind of be my favorite play out of the 6K range. But is there any other guys in there, Coop, that you have any interest in there?
I think Bubba and Eric Jones are probably where I would throw a dart. Not a big fan of either of them, to be honest, but I think Eric Jones could put something together, and I think maybe he can fight for a top 18, top 15 type place, which at that price, I think it would be about what you're looking for. So I don't mind him either. Moving down, though, I actually do really like Corey LaJoy. At 5,700, he races really well at these tracks, and I would prefer him over the other two, actually. So to get the salary relief that goes along with it, I think is nice, but I think everybody kind of knows that he runs well at these types of tracks, and so I do expect his ownership to be a lot higher on these shorter tracks than it normally would be for a longer track.
Yeah, I think LaJoy is probably – go ahead, sorry.
I know we have Haley and Huff down there as low. If you were going to punt, which I do not plan on doing, I've never really punt, but if you're going down and you have $4,800 left, I might play Balicki over Haley and Huff. I think he's right there with those two, but again, I wouldn't do it regardless.
Yeah, I wouldn't punt either. I haven't really built too many lines yet, but I could see if you plug those in of, hey, I'm going to try to jam 4 of these dominators in my line, or 3 for sure ones. I think it potentially might be 2 of them. And if the other guy doesn't lead, I know he's still going to run top 10. If those drivers who you plug in lead a bulk of this race where it's 100 plus laps and they are earning you a ton of points, like even if Haley finishes 30th and Huff, finishes 30th, they're not going to score you a ton of points, but the benefit is then you can get those top plays, but you really have to nail them. So you're almost kind of wasting a spot if you play one of these guys, and if you don't take kind of the more balanced lineup approach. But I don't hate it, just based off of kind of they can finish 30th, and if guys wreck out, maybe they can finish higher. But like you were saying, I probably wouldn't punt if you don't have to. But that's going to do it for the New Hampshire weekend. So as always, thank you guys so much for all the support. We've been growing like crazy. A lot of new followers over on Twitter. Our videos have been getting a bunch of likes and comments, getting new subscribers every weekend as well. So thank you guys for all the support. But that's going to do it for NASCAR DFS for Fast Cars, Fast Money. And we will catch you guys after the Olympics.